Oh, and in terms of visuals, I mean, I was thinking of, Sir Terry's famous buildings often had these kind of postmodern flourishes and turrets. You think digital technology will change how buildings look? Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, yes, I
Because
think
you
it
went
will,
digital
and
cladding, wasn't it? I,
well, exactly. I mean, there's been a long history of going back to the 60s of buildings with screens and things on them, try to give the impression of sort of dynamic buildings that are sort of constantly kind of flashing up new images or material. But actually, what we'll be reaching very soon, I think, given the massive investment from tech firms in this, is actually the focus kind of shifted back to the viewer in a sense. So we'll be looking at buildings, looking at everything, but particularly the built environment through the lens of a digital layer, which means essentially buildings become skinnable in a sense. You can add digital layers on top of them, which can be personal to you, can be dynamic, can alter in real time. And this, I think, completely upturns how we think about architecture, how we think about the built environment, both in terms of thinking about retrofit and also particularly, new build and what those new buildings might actually be like if we live in a world where they are just actually surfaces on which digital layers are projected.
it doesn't sound very green, though. Digital layers implies energy consumption, doesn't it? It implies having a reliable, electricity supply potentially, which is not something some places have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're big questions. We've kind of gotten used to this idea that the digital is somehow disconnected from its the sort of underlying material impact, that it's disconnected from the world. But of course, even a simple Google search has a carbon implication.
Yeah, but it's a
I
lot
think the
smaller. It's
question,
a lot smaller than a building like a
yeah,
cheese grater.
it's a lot smaller than a building, but if it means that a building can actually be much simpler, that we aren't
Yeah.
spending lots of money on complex facades or cladding systems, that actually it becomes just very, very functional, then there is the potential for to be far less embodied carbon in a building. And of course, if you're thinking about retrofit as well, it
Mm.
means that so much of what drives retrofit now is not so much kind of upgrading a building, although that is always part of it, but it's kind of changing the image of a building in a sense. So if that can be done digitally with a still present carbon footprint, but a much smaller one, then I think that potentially unlocks some really interesting directions.